My face currently feels like I've been run through by Tom Stewart.
Puts it to the top of the square. Oh, beautiful little fist in there by Dale. Crucial centimetre moments.
He definitely has a bit of the Belcho spirit. As I have a bit of the Belcho spirit.
Hello and welcome to the podcast that is coming to you live from Adelaide, but not really because we're actually from the studio, which is actually a lounge room. It's the Back Pocket. We're finally on the board this week. My name is Jack and I am joined once again by Alistair, who is having a great time.
I am not well. We're not on the board. We never win here.
L's only.
Yeah.
It's this week was at least a more interesting week to watch football.
I don't know.
Yeah, you were suffering through it, but there were some games that were worth watching. Easter Monday, absolutely not worth watching after half time.
No, I watched up until half time, then left, and then it turned into a shit show. So
I talked about that. I did a feature on the Hoops podcast this week, and I talked about that. I said I need to stop you from watching Geelong games this year for the sake of Geelong, because as soon as you walked out of the room, it was 16 goals to 1. So if the rest of the season can continue like that, I'd be pretty stoked, I think.
Yeah, I watched every Geelong game except for that half, so that tells you a bit. Maybe I'll keep watching Geelong games just to make you suffer.
Yeah, that's all right. I probably deserve it. All right, well, I'm happy to jump straight into the votes if you are ready to go. I've done the intro. You'll start the votes.
All right.
What is your one for the week?
I'm chucking my one to my favourite, Jacob Wiedering. I'm giving him one vote.
It's a fair vote.
I feel like it's discounted slightly because Larkey was injured, but Wiedering had 15 disposals and 14 marks. He just kind of was everywhere and played really well. He had 11 1%ers to go with that, handful of rebound 50s, and I think he's been pretty severely underrated this year. I think the problem with those Carlton defenders at the moment is young Wiedering and McGovern are really sharing the load, so it's hard to pick a standout each week.
Yeah, and even with young Cowan down there and Sard getting as much of the ball as they are, like that
and
ball being
Nick Newman had the game of his life last week, so
that ball is really being shared around back there. So I do understand what you mean, but he did have a really good game. I had him in spoilers, but I had him in my special mentions for this week. For how good he was, and again, Larkey was the first guy who's been kept goalless this year. Finally blemished his perfect record of 21 goals straight or something ridiculous like that. It's regardless of whether he was slightly injured, it was a good performance. And you got to play on who you got to play on. And Wiedering's had 2 of those this year where he's played really well on people who had the caveat of not being at 100%, but he's still one of the best defenders in the comp. And it was a really good game. My one this week was to Sam Collins, who I thought was really the only reason that they didn't get scored far worse against.
It's been a delight.
I don't know if he got any coaches votes this week. I think he might have, but he had four wins out of 4 contested defensive one-on-ones, 14 spoils, 11 marks, and 7 of them were intercepts. 13 total intercept possessions, so there was another 6 intercepts he had that weren't marks, 7 contested possessions, and 12 defensive half pressure acts for a big man. He did everything he could to keep them in that game, and they were in the first half. But yeah, I thought it was a really good game from him. Always happy to give him a vote, but he got in there just based on a true grit performance, I think it was.
If Touk Miller wasn't in that team, he would be their captain.
Absolutely.
And I think he's really improved his game this year just by the sheer fact of he's getting a lot more intercepts and possessions in general. He's linking up well, so I'm pretty impressed with him being even better than he was last year. Yeah,
it's less dour and defensive and a bit more of an aggressive attacking game at the same time as keeping people pretty much scoreless. Yeah,
he's probably the most underrated defender going around now that Cal Wilkie's recognised.
He's finally getting the plaudits he deserves. Yeah.
So I'm happy to keep backing in Sam Collins.
All right, who was your 2?
My votes are a bit all over the place. I'm giving 2 to Aliria.
Fair enough. Yep.
Obviously he had the spoil that saved the game, which is pretty amazing.
Yep.
To go with that, he had 12 intercepts, couple of marks. He had a low number game. We've had a couple of these this year where it's important.
9 of his touches were contested as well, which is huge.
He's back in form, and that's great for Port because they really need him.
I saw a joke during the week that said with Sydney's defensive stocks dropping like flies, I bet they wish they had someone like Aliir on their list. I thought it was a weird one to let go. I think he does seem to have improved again at Port, but he was already a good defender before. And yeah, he's playing really well this year. He's been a big reason why Port have won the games they have. And yeah, like you said, that last gasp spoil was incredible.
I think that's one,
celebrating it.
That's one I definitely got wrong when he initially was let go and Port picked him up. I thought, nah, he's probably not going to be the best 22 player. Maybe he'll come in every now and then, but I was completely wrong and happy to be so because he's been really good for them when he's been fit and well.
I thought the same thing with Port. Obviously, already had pretty good tall, but not really tall defensive stocks, which is where Lear fits into. I think he's only 192 or so centimeters tall, but he's just got the speed and the leap that makes him such an asset. And when he gets the ball, regardless of whether it's his 12 to 15 disposal games, his decision making is really good, and he can really set them up to attack. My 2 was to Jack Sinclair, who I thought just had an incredible game. He's just having a really good season with a bit more freedom. I feel like he's not getting as much of the football, but he's doing a lot more with it.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Just very damaging. He's the kind of player that you have to wonder whether there's a cause to put a forward tag on him sometimes because he's so important to their structure, especially when Steele's not playing. He's such a leader on the field for them, and I just love the way he goes about his footy. Has to be one of the best turnarounds of a footballer I've ever seen. From someone who was an average wingman to one of the best halfbacks in the comp now.
You used to pretty much make fun of him every single week.
I did, yeah. And now it's just Jack Billings who can't get a game. So, big fan of Sinclair.
It's tough because not every team has a player capable of doing a forward tag. You saw what happened with Lockie Jones. Yep. That was a bloodbath. It's interesting. I think there are some clubs that can definitely do it. But I think the most important part is just making sure you kick accurately inside 50 and you stop his game. But obviously no team is good at that.
Full of players who are capable of doing things to you. So, that's my 2.
Respectable. I have him in my honourable mentions. I didn't fit him in this week.
Yep.
So very quick 3. My 3 goes to Sam Collins.
Yep.
I think Sam Collins had as good a game as who I voted for my 5.
Yep.
But obviously always a little bit lessened by a loss. Like I said before, he's a general. I think he's their vice captain, is he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
I think they've got dual captains and one vice, which is a weird way to set it up. But
it's odd, but I think that's deserved, and he is a real leader. Like I said before, probably the most underrated defender, and we don't need to talk much more about him because we already did.
Just about this podcast's favourite footballer already.
He's up there in my top 10.
Another one of this podcast's favourite footballers was my 3 votes with Mason Redman. He had another ripper game. I love watching him play football. I know it doesn't go on our stats for him, but did kick another goal on the weekend. Brought out the horns with his stupid celebration. But he's becoming very quickly just about Essendon's most important player.
I think he is the most attractive free agent.
Yeah, I was going to say, being a free agent this year, he's going to pull in, whether he stays at Essendon or goes anywhere else, he's going to pull in some serious money. The way he finished the back half of last season and the way he started this year, he is one of the most exciting talents in the competition, and realistically probably could play a wing role at a team that really needs him as well, in the same way that Tomlinson was doing for a while there. I think he's a very attractive prospect as a free agent, and there's a lot of teams who, especially you watch the way these players are playing half back now, he could really complete a team that's almost there.
I don't even think my team needs him currently, and I would take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one. If he decides to go, whoever has to deal with Essendon as part of that trade is in for a fucking rough trade period.
Well, he's restricted, isn't he, free agent? So if they want him, it's going to be
it's going to be an interesting one.
Essendon will match anything that he is offered. I can almost guarantee it.
Because they better not be paying full cap at the moment. I hate my four because I don't know how to pronounce it. Michelini.
Oh, yeah,
Adelaide.
Max Michelini. Yep.
I don't know how to say it.
Maxi Boy?
Yeah, let's go with Maxi Boy.
Maxi Mitch.
I've given him 4. It's a bit of just a personal one. I feel bad because stats-wise, he doesn't line up at all.
He was in my special mentions this week. But he really did have a really good game.
For a 4th gamer.
I think he got coaches' votes as
well. I think he did. I think he got 5 coaches' votes.
Defensive effort for the ages. Obviously, Matt Taberner's out injured now, but gave him an absolute bath, and he's a kid. It was and we talked about in pre-season about how exciting it is to watch a young talent who's a key defender come through and play so early. I think we're seeing why.
I think that's why I'm giving him a higher vote than he should probably get here, because it's his 4th game. He's a kid, and he absolutely wiped.
He bathed that whole forward line.
Yeah.
It was just anywhere the ball went, he was putting on pressure.
It was interesting. I ventured into the Adelaide big footy board, and they were talking about who's going to take Curnow and Mackay, and they were just saying he's going to take both and he'll destroy them. And I really liked that. So I don't know. I think he's a future favourite. So I've given him my 4.
No, I rate that. My 4 was to the aforementioned Callum Wilkie.
Mm-hmm.
He is an incredible footballer.
Might as well just drop my 5.
Was your 5 as well? Wilkie. Yeah, I thought it might have been. And we can do a roundabout there. My 5 was Aliria.
Okay.
To go back, hence why I had his stats at the ready. What a game he had as well. That spoil was phenomenal. But yeah, Callum Wilkie just goes from strength to strength, doesn't he? We talked about him being underrated last year. He couldn't be more rated now. He's leading that team with their captains injured, doing a great job of that. I think he leads by example on the field. Players walk higher when he's around, but 12 intercepts again, which is just ridiculous. He piles them on. Another 5 spoils, 7 intercept marks, and I feel like that wasn't even the major influence he had. He just filled the holes and they need to be filled. St Kilda are just on a roll currently. People will say they've only played certain teams, but you can only beat who you've played, and the teams they've beaten have looked good in the other games. Like Essendon have been playing reasonable football, and St Kilda beat them pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting to see St Kilda as they do start to come up against some more finals fancies in the next few weeks. But
could be an interesting game next week and this week as well.
Yeah, and they should have Membry back this week, which is big for their forward line.
I saw Ross Lyon say he wasn't
not guaranteed.
I
was
like, come on,
been the best forward of that club for about 5 years. But yeah, they are just cruising, and he's a big part of why. Callum Wilkie's a jet, really. Yeah,
he's 4 rounds in. He's my probably first pick All Australian behind Clayton Oliver.
Yeah, he's just
probably behind him and Cameron actually.
Yeah, they're pretty. Yeah,
they're the top
middle,
3. They're the one
back.
From each line I'm picking.
I'm happy to just at the moment put Tim English in the ruck as well.
Yeah, those are 4. Those are the top 4 in the 4.
One key pillar. That's it. Everything else can get raffled off. I'll run through a few.
I only have one honourable mention.
Oh, yeah?
So I'm just going to shoot it. Tyler Young from Richmond.
He was down as mine as well. 15 spoils.
He is a 1% king. Oh. He's it's like he watched Lewis Young last year and went, I can do that, but better.
15 spoils, won 4 or 5 contested defensive one-on-ones, and it was his second game. It's just
I wanted to give him a vote.
Brilliant. And if they'd won, he might have got a vote.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been one of those ones. Yeah, he was really good. One of my other special mentions was Tom Stewart for his first half when the game was actually close. I think he sacrificed his own game to really lock that back line as much as he could. He sat in that hole, sat behind the play, killed me in fantasy because he just played a totally different role to what he normally does. But he obviously is the vice captain now, knew what was needed of him, his role in the team that day, and just completely changed the way he played.
Let's not do that again.
Yeah, no, I didn't love it. And my other 2 were Dane Rampy. We've already given a couple of mentions this year. He was really good, and unlucky to lose that game. And Bailey Dale as well, who
Dale's a weird one.
But he plays a lot of wing time.
Sheasel and Dykos, I find it hard to give them votes.
Even Josh Battle gets up the ground a lot more. It's hard to give players who spend so much time
Tom
outside
Stewart's
of the
starting
back
on
line.
the wing a lot too, so he's going to start to disappear out of votes.
Yeah. So I've only got one real topic this week that I've wanted to talk about.
Good.
I'm sure we'll think of other things. But I just laughed at... Did you see how they decided... The home teams of the gather round they said yesterday?
They flipped a coin, didn't they?
Yeah, someone at AFL House tossed a coin for each game, and somehow that ended up with both the Adelaide teams being home teams.
Well, those ones should have just been home anyway.
Christ, you tossed a coin to decide the home games the week of. I can hardly believe that. Some teams already had their kits for gather round ready to go. What if they were told they were the UA team? What if Freo were told, after designing their AFLX looking neon jumper, that they were going to be the away team?
I don't understand. Is there an AFL mandate for gather-round jumpers? Because 5 or 6 clubs have them, and the rest are just nah.
I like that Adelaide just went with their 2003 away strip. I thought that was cool, which is good that Carlton's going to be wearing the white to clash with that. But I thought that was fine, but Freo's was weird. Some clubs have got them, others have just gone...
It's a perfect chance for... Carlton to pretend to be the double blues and wear the M&M.
That would have been great. I would love that. That's North could have worn the orange kangaroo.
That's one of the worst. But yeah,
Hawthorn could have worn the army silver.
And not every club, well, most clubs have gone for the horrible Anzac Guernseys, but not all of them.
I would love the AFL to do like an ugly jumpers heritage round. Like each club just wears
their worst
jumper. Like I would love, like Geelong wearing that like weird grey and blue with the big 90s logo in the middle of it jumper. Hawthorn wearing that silver.
You get the Thor jumper out for Bulldogs.
Yeah, the Thor jumper could come out.
And encourage all of the...
Essendon's one with the like 2 centimetre thick sash through the middle. There's a lot of hideous jumpers we've seen. Richmond's one that was just that big tiger face on a grey jumper.
You can encourage all the fans to dress up stupid and in costumes as well.
Yeah, I'd rate that.
That could be fun.
The other one I thought of was, surely if you're making this gather round an extra round, so there's 24 weeks this year, you make all the teams that are playing this week teams that would be playing each other twice. There's some teams playing this week that neither of them are going to get a home game against each other this year because their only game against each other is in gather round. Surely that could have been better organised.
It's a weird one. The fixture is all over the place, like always.
You do the rest of the fixtures and then you do a gather round and you make sure it's all teams that have only played once. Like that has to be a more sensible way to do it, rather than there's teams this week. Like I said, Geelong and West Coast won't. I think Sydney, the game they're playing, those teams aren't going to play each other at home at all this year, which is a weird caveat to this year's fixture.
It's definitely strange, but hey, the AFL fixture is going to be the AFL fixture. It's never made sense, and it never will.
Like they've got their structure in place for it, but even that is iffy.
Yeah. Especially when they try and force those double ups, Essendon and Collingwood.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, right? They do. Everyone plays a team from their bracket twice, and the one below them twice, and the one furthest away from them only once. But if the double up from the one furthest away from you only once is your rival team, then that's already erased that one. You've got to go the 2 and 2 from the other ones, or vice versa. So it's never going to be a fair fixture unless they play 30.
And it's always been a weird one because you always see a top side get the absolute worst. Geelong and North was one that was a couple of years of just smashings. Adelaide Gold Coast was a...
Yeah, Richmond used to get Gold Coast
that one
twice a year every year for a while for no reason.
Those three are ones that stick out in my mind as always happening. And one that pisses me off is Carlton always play St Kilda twice. They're my absolute bogey team, and that pisses me off.
Yeah, well, I was happy that Geelong didn't get Collingwood twice last year because I'm always worried about Collingwood games.
Yeah, those ones are usually good to watch.
And
greatest modern rivalry.
It's still, and obviously the Geelong Hawthorn game didn't really live up to it, but like
first half was pretty good.
If Geelong has a rival, it's Hawthorn still for me. Collingwood have been good games, but there's been patches in and out of that. And I think the fans don't care about that as much as they care about Collingwood or would care about Essendon, or Geelong would care about Hawthorn. So
nah.
They can manufacture it as much as they want, though. I love a good rivalry. It would suck to support one of those teams that doesn't really have one, I think, because those games really get fans invested. We've got, I think it's the earliest in the 18-team comp. Big jump on brain thoughts for me, but this is the earliest in the 18-team comp that we've had no teams without a win.
Really? After 4 rounds?
We've had 5 happen twice.
Interesting.
It's never been 4 rounds that we've had everyone get a win in. It's happened as late as 13, 14 rounds before. 9's about the average. But 4 is the earliest ever since the 18 team started. So that's pretty cool. Might not have happened if Davies, Uniacke and Simpkin didn't go down. We could be looking at it being a lot further out, but thanks to that, here we are. And also West Coast injuries kicked in just late enough for them to get some wins on the board. What curse have they suffered? They already had it they had the injuries during the actual COVID year, and then the next year they all got COVID instead. And then injuries after that. And now they started this year they were playing reasonable football. The game against North, I feel like it was just a reasonable game of footy between two lower but not bottom rung sides. And then the first 3 quarters against Freo, they looked good, and then it kicked in, and then manhandled by Brisbane because it was half kids. Melbourne, because it was half kids out there.
I think it is just a case of a couple of too many older players going on. Soft tissue injuries.
It is a part list management.
Are avoidable by not having a bunch of 30-plussers. And it's amazing that, the bad luck that it happens constantly at West Coast, but you don't see it as much like at Geelong. It's a real kind of bummer.
I feel like it's one of those ones. Oh, sorry, I'll let you.
Yeah, because we Shuey and Hearn and Yo, when they're playing their best, are still capable, valuable players, but I feel like, even Natanui too, but I don't even remember the last time we saw him. It's a shame because they're all good enough to make that team 10, 20, 30% better, but we don't see it because they're just injured.
Yeah, and I think it's a case of, like, you look at the other quote-unquote older sides in the comp, which are Collingwood, Geelong, Richmond. The players they've kept on that are older aren't players who've had years played with injury. Like, they're older players who get injured are the ones that retire at 30, 31, whereas...
Except Jamie Elliott.
West Coast have kept those players on their list. I think that's the difference there.
It's a loyalty thing, and maybe that's a list management thing that might need to change. Remember when Hawthorn, even though it hasn't turned out well for them, were moving on aged players, probably before they were ready, but it's probably the right call.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it's a once burnt, twice shy from people watching it happen to North Melbourne, who moved on their few older players, whether it be by trade or forced retirements, and then it kind of went, that was absolutely the wrong idea. And
then Goldstein survived an extra 6 years.
He's still there.
They have 5 ruckmen, don't they?
Essendon were another one that didn't do it. Like they kept them on the list too long. So I think teams really just are wary of getting rid of them too early because it could work out like it has for Geelong or Collingwood. But also that you look at the other end of the spectrum, and if you keep them on too long and you've just got literally list space for no reason not being used. And West Coast is a big example of that. A lot of those players would have played 5 or less games last year, and it looks like they'll do the same again.
Which is a shame because it is really depressing having to put up with my West Coast supporting friend hating life. So I wish him some good luck.
It's more fun to make fun of West Coast when they're all fit, like when there's no nothing on top of it, you can make fun of West Coast fine. But when they're all injured and there's reasons for it, it's not quite as fun. It feels like punching down.
I will say for their supporters, it's good to see Oscar Allen back. He's been playing well and
looks really good.
He is a talent. That mark he took against Freo in the first quarter, where he basically jumped over a lad, that was good. I think it was Brennan Cox. He's a delight to watch. So,
and they're younger talent, whether it be younger or like middle-aged younger, in your Wests and your Cullies, and they do look like genuinely good footballers. They just need some star power in there, I think, with them.
Yeah, I think they're a little limited.
They've got a lot of support role players who would look good in a really good side, but I think that they need something in that midfield, whether it be a Parish or someone who's a free agent this year as well, or even looking at just trying to bring someone home, because obviously we see a lot of WA boys like to come home if that's the case, and just get someone to fill that gap. Because if Shuey and Sheed are going to be injured as often as they are, I think Sheed was running today, but if those kinds of players are going to be missing from that midfield most of the time, Yo is obviously the main one, then it's hard to justify having the not quite A-listers in the side with them, because they're just not going to be able to pull their weight.
Yeah, it's a strange one, but we'll see how their season unfolds. Hopefully they can get it together midway through.
Yeah, we said that last year though, and they just couldn't do it, and that's where the issue always comes, that the care factor goes away as well, and the confidence as well goes away once your team's already 10-1. Like, it's hard to
10-1
motivate yourself to
start to the season.
That was Melbourne last year.
You 1-10.
I meant 1-10. I did. I was thinking about the losses, so I said the losses first.
Yeah. You do that pretty often, actually. It's
I
pretty
do
funny.
all the time. It's not how my brain functions. If I wrote it down, it'd be fine. But so we got a few games at weird ovals this week. But we've got, more importantly, I think it's 6 games on Adelaide Oval.
2 in a row.
Potentially, 2 genuinely back-to-back.
Yep.
Potentially in a rainy weekend.
I'm interested in that one because they're both sellouts. Do you have to get everyone out of the stadium even if you bought a ticket to both? Do you have to go out and come back in?
Yeah, you must do, right? Because,
like you
said, they're both sellouts.
So frustrating.
How
long do they have to celebrate in between games? You have to sing in the rooms while the other ones are getting ready nearby you? Actually,
worse, it's 2 back-to-backs. It's back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday. So
it's weird.
The Essendon Melbourne game is backing straight onto the Port Bulldogs game, and then the next day, Geelong West Coast back straight onto the Collingwood Adelaide game. So are they just going to send security through just to push everyone out?
Probably.
And bring a whole new crowd in? That's going to be hectic.
It's going to be insane. There's going to be a lot of people that miss the start of that game, I'd imagine. And they're also playing that one game at, I think it's Norwood.
Norwood? Yeah, there's one at
like
Norwood.
A brand new stadium.
And two at Norwood, sorry. Yeah, the
No, the one at Mount Barker, sorry, is the one which is a brand new stadium.
Yeah, Adelaide Hills, yeah.
I'm hoping that the drainage is good because, boy, that's going to be a fucking mess.
I saw... Where was... Oh, that's right, we were watching it together. We were just watching dumb AFL YouTube stuff. That
sounds
ground
like something we'd
in
do.
rural South Australia where the Bulldogs were meant to play that pre-season game and the drainage just ran off the ground into the change rooms and they just had to call the game off.
The groundskeeper's
like,
it drains pretty well, but not going to happen.
So hopefully that doesn't happen because that would create all sorts of...
Could you imagine if a game gets cancelled because of rain?
God,
Absolute disaster.
Imagine if it's the game. Imagine if it's Collingwood St Kilda at the end of the weekend, game number 6 on the ground, and the stadium's not fit for playing.
Hopefully there's no
Would they just play on a sandful ground? Would they just have to move it?
I don't know if you can do that when you've sold tickets to the game.
Yeah,
if you're downgrading and making everyone stand around a sandful oval.
That game will be a sellout just purely because Collingwood and St Kilda fans will fly over for it because
I think it already is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that game would have sold out.
I think they revealed that Geelong,
Adelaide,
Collingwood, Carlton, and someone else's games are sold out. Carlton obviously makes sense because they're playing Adelaide.
Bigger teams coming from Melbourne are going to bring the crowd with them because it's only an hour's flight. It's not.
It's is it Brisbane North? That one's going to be rough.
Yeah, is that one at one of the rural stadiums?
I think that one might be at Mount Barker.
Brisbane North is Adelaide Hills, so that's fine. The Norwood games are Fremantle Gold Coast.
Yeah, no one's going to that.
And GWS Hawthorn. So they have put the games that make sense.
Although I do know my cousin's coming over to see Port and West Coast.
Oh, that's nice.
I got a message in the group chat. She's like, not coming to your mum's birthday. I'm going to the footy.
I don't even know if Geelong playing here this year. They might get a Freo game. Definitely don't have a West Coast game.
I don't know.
But yeah, it's going to be an interesting round for the fun of it. I do feel like it would have made more sense as a pre-season thing than a mid-season thing.
Freo in round 10 here.
All right, well, that'll be fun. But yeah, I do think it would have made more sense to have this as a pre-season style tournament and maybe even have a little cup at the end. I think playing it mid-season is just a weird idea just straight off the bat.
Be a cool round 1 thing too.
Yeah.
Or even... I guess the final round's a bit weird because there's so much at stake, but I like the idea of in the final round playing every game at the same time.
Oh, well, they used to, and I like it too because
I think that would be fun.
It takes away teams knowing what they've got to do before they play.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're playing on the Sunday and you know that the team that could have gone past you has already lost, then you might rest a player, last minute, late change. But if you don't know, because I think they do it in the basketball in America. If you don't know what's at stake in your game, then it makes it a higher stakes game every game. And I think that would be a much better way to do it. Maybe not from a fan perspective for watching the games. I think we'd be having a nightmare trying to keep up with that.
But that's the fun part. You'd be checking all the other games. Yeah,
and they do around
happening.
The grounds at quarter time and 3/4 time, like getting someone, and this is the score here and here.
I think they should do that.
I'm on board with it. I'm also on board with scrapping the bounce. I don't know if we've made an official position on that yet, but we don't need it. I feel like it's a weird... People are like, it's going to get rid of ruckcraft. It's all... It'll save time with the 666 coming back in.
So annoying.
It'll stop people from kneeing people in the chest because the ball's gone too high and everyone's waiting in the middle.
I'm not talking about kneeing anymore because I'm sick of it already.
It's too much discussion about it.
Bounce.
But yeah, get rid of the bounce. It gets rid of the confusion and the uncertainty. Some people are like, it'll just be like a basketball hit tap out. It's not though, because they're still running in from different sides of the circle and trying to tap it to players in different directions.
It'll just stop the fact that the ball's going to go fucking anywhere.
Yes.
And it's going to stop people getting injured.
I feel like I've always found it, even without the the injuries and stuff, especially since 666 has come in. When they bounce it, it leaves the circle, and they have to wait for everyone to get back into their positions outside, inside the 50s, and then finally
4
throw
to
it
5
up.
seconds of actual game time gets eaten up.
Yeah, because the ball's gone in the air and then they finally called it back. It's just a pathetic waste of time in a game where those seconds
pathetic waste of time.
Absolutely precious in some games. Like, imagine if Sydney had 10 more seconds against Port. It becomes a completely different game.
That gets punched back in.
And then it could be a kick,
and Mills is in the right position to kick a goal.
Yes. While he's celebrating. I just think that it's something that does need to be gotten rid of. It's a pointless thing that we're clinging to in the game. And there's a lot of those. One of them is, as we mentioned, Todd Goldstein. That's really harsh. I like Goldie. I think he's good.
Oh, that's rough. He's the only person who listens to this podcast. He's gonna cry.
Sorry, Todd. I feel like with your high energy situation and the fact that I was going to come up with a who would win this week. I didn't do it. So
who would win? 22 Nick Dykos or 22 Harry Sheasel?
Nick Dykos. Who would win? 22 Nick Dykos or 22 Josh Dykos?
Josh Dykos.
Absolutely.
He'd get less possessions, but he'd be more dangerous.
Absolutely. The goals would be outrageous.
Nick Dykos would just be handballing it to himself in the back line. It'd be like a real AFL live situation, just passing it back and forth until he gets tackled.
when you've got the game stat 30 effective handballs, you're like, oh, hang on, it's the last quarter.
That's funny.
That's a game I pay to watch. Nick Riewoldt versus Jack Riewoldt. That's a silly one.
Nick Riewoldt.
It's Nick Riewoldt every day. I'm trying to think of brother pairs that could be fun to match up.
Harry Mackay versus Ben Mackay. No one shows up.
No, yeah, well, one of them shows up. It's awkward. It's so funny, isn't it, that he's back a week early? Like, he was meant to be out until next week, but now they've played Carlton. He's back a week early. It's just theatre. I'm so here for
those two are dickheads. So it's worse because they're just little shits.
It would have been funnier if Harry's ban had held up and then Ben had come back. That really would have got the conspiracy theorists.
It's not my kind of comedy, but I get what you're saying.
All right, let's wrap this up because I'm dying.
Yes, we will see you hopefully on Wednesday next week. But the way we're going, it's almost a Thursday show now. But that's okay.
Shit happens. Games are on Mondays. Stuff sucks.
Games are on Mondays, and then they're on Thursdays. There's not enough time to make things happen between.
Yeah,
we had to fly to Adelaide for this.
It's very expensive, so please donate to us on Ko-Fi.
Yeah, you can find us at the Back Pocket AU. Also there on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. You can find us on all the different area codes.
You can find, and we are on the interwebs.
Have you ever, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.